So, if you're familiar with me or any of my content, you'll know I'm an avid fan of the Flash TV series. Originally, I was going to do a video ranking all of the main characters from the series, a video I will likely do sometime down the line. Now, I was like, right, last place is clearly Cecile, like it was essentially no contest. Until I remembered Khione existing in the final series. So, I was stumped. I did actually start planning to rank the characters, only I kept thinking about Khione and why she exists. So let's deep dive it, let's discuss Khione in some more depth. Right, from the beginning of the TV series, the Flash was alluding to Caitlin Snow becoming the popular supervillain Killer Frost, with Season 2 in particular having lots of fun nods and Easter eggs to this possibility. Eventually, the more the show went on, the more she began to embody this part of her. Series 3 had Killer Frost unleash fury on Central City and left Barry in a compromising position with Julian. Each subsequent season since seemed to do something to the character, whether that's for better or for worse. Season 5 introduced her supervillain father, Icicle, into the mix. It's also where the audience learned that she always had Killer Frost as a part of her. Eventually, the pair split off and we are left with Caitlin Snow and Killer Frost. This always felt like a weird decision to me, especially as Caitlin has near enough no more character development until the back half of Season 8. And even then, it's not that great either. Killer Frost, however, undergoes a stereotypical redemption arc where she even drops part of her title and is known as just Frost. Again, it feels like directionless rubbish to pad the background plot. Speaking of Season 8, during the Deathstorm arc, Frost becomes Hellfrost and is able to take down Deathstorm but at the cost of her own life. This in turn causes Caitlin to have a bit of a breakdown. She believes she has lost part of herself. She is no longer complete without Frost, as they're like sisters. Which is also very weird Eric Wallace-esque character writing. She enlists Mark, who is also broken over the loss of Frost, to help build a regeneration chamber to bring Frost back from the dead. Barry loses his mind when he learns of this and destroys the chamber and all of their work. Let's just pause here for a second. When this scene aired, I really liked this. I liked the lengths Barry went to for Caitlin and really hoped it would drive a wedge between them. I thought it might be part of the arc for the final series, that Caitlin struggles to forgive Barry for what he did. I could see it being part of the grief for her character journey, and it would work with Frost too. But I think the experiment failing and Caitlin blaming Barry for the cause is much stronger writing. So we had the cliffhanger. Who was coming out of the chamber? I really hoped it would be Caitlin. I could never have predicted the really dumb choice they made. Like I said, the chamber doors open and we have to wait until Season 9 to see Caitlin emerge. Only she doesn't. At the beginning, even this new entity doesn't know what she is. I know what she is. She's wasting time in a restricted episode count. She isn't entirely sure what she is, other than having some tie to Caitlin and Frost born from that chamber. And yes, there's cringy dialogue alluding to her being essentially an infant here. She decides to refer to herself as Snow, which I suppose is meant to mean she embodies the best qualities of both, although this title is short-lived. After an encounter and new friendship with Hartley, aka the Pied Piper, she takes on the title of Khione, which derives from the Greek goddess for snow. So essentially it's a more pretentious way of saying snow and some internal logic of her leaving her predecessors behind, I suppose. Do you see the issue here? This is episode 2 of a 13 episode run. This is a newly introduced character and all we have from her so far is naming herself twice. Like what? So Mark, a dude who essentially screws Barry over and helps Red Death, pretty much dies. The team get him back to Star Labs, but he is essentially in a really bad way. Khione and the rest of the team aren't sure what to do. Iris gives Khione a little pep talk about following her heart. You know, the same old story from Season 6 onwards of this show. She kisses Mark and makes some magical ice thing happen and he comes back from the dead. I mean, it's a bit of a random jump the shark moment and Mark seems to be enjoying it way too much, especially considering the questionable dream he has later on. Like, could she not have touched his hand and healed him or blasted him from far away? Also, all it took was a plain speech from Iris for this woman to realise she has super ice powers. Weird. I think there were better ways across the previous episodes to establish her ice medic powers than randomly springing it in. Especially as so many of the side characters were getting battered by the rogues and Red Death. Have her powers slowly build up via them. It's more natural, concrete, and makes Khione seem slightly more useful overall. Oh yeah, and she casually tells everyone Iris is pregnant because she senses life or whatever. So Mark and Chester tried to figure out what Khione is, as her powers seem very tied to feeling and emotion. Like her reconciling with Mark made Snowfall and Star Labs, almost like she's the god of life, but that would be a dumb concept. During this process, Khione meets Caitlyn's mother Carla, who is able to determine that Khione is a separate entity, not being a metahuman or even human. In response to this, Khione seemed blissfully unaware of what she actually is. A completely blank character slate, similar to Allegra in that way. Her sort of healing ability seems to be useful and a slightly overpowered plot device going forward, as she froze all the water in John Diggle's body to free him from blood work along with the rest of the partygoers. And even in the Cobalt Blue arc, she was able to save Mark after he was bewitched by the negative Speed Force. So, in a lazy writing sort of way, this is her use for the majority of the series. She gave Barry some soppy speech that Iris gave her before he confronted Eddie for the last time, a moment which was essentially built up across the series, and it kind of amounts to nothing. I feel like after these 13 episodes, we still don't really know Khione at all. Once the villain has stopped being evil because Barry talked to him for the millionth time, Timeless Wells tells Khione it's time for her to ascend. In typical Doctor Who style, Khione regenerated back into Caitlin Snow, and she embraces Barry. You know, despite how badly they left things beforehand. Before I delve into some behind the scenes stuff, I think I want to attempt to sum Khione up. She's the avatar for the god of life. So the one sort of thread throughout all 13 episodes is the knowledge that the negative Speed Force is searching for a new avatar. I think Khione was meant to be the sort of counter to that in the world, which is dumb as Barry is that opposing value. Or if the intent was for her to be a slightly unorthodox mentor, then I also think that is really stupid. Like, this is the final season. The Flash does not need a mentor at this point in his life. Okay, so before tackling this topic, the biggest question I had was, is Khione an existing or based on a character from the comics? No, she is not. At most, her ties to pop culture and greater fiction is the fact her name references Greek mythology, as I stated earlier on. I have seen a few online try to debate and argue her existence being a nod to Danielle Panabaker's character in the movie Sky High. Layla is a hero whose abilities are tied to plants and life. In some ways, these two characters are similar, but in my head, a fun little nod isn't justification of a character's existence on a show. I have found some old quotes in various news outlets from showrunner Eric Wallace in response to Khione's inclusion. I will leave the links to these in the description. With Khione, although it worked out great, I had originally pitched it to Danielle Panabaker as a 2-year story, and suddenly I didn't have 2 years to tell her story, Wallace says. So the whole first half got thrown out. It was supposed to start with who comes out of that crystal coffin, right? We had to change so many things. Where we ended up is equally as shocking and surprising and emotional as what we would have gotten in season 10. But we did lose some of the minutiae that I think would have been very enjoyable for the fanbase and for us as writers and directors. I can appreciate that the reduced episode count or even season count may have been a bit of a shock for him, but equally, it's not enough time. I think it may have been better to go with what I said and have the resolution be Caitlin and Barry's restored friendship. Hell, she could even give Barry the same soppy speech to reiterate they're still friends. Or just not have Danielle Panabaker in the final season. It's a bit dark, but maybe the chamber killed her. Panabaker described Khione in her own words as, "One of my favourite things about Khione is her innocence and just this optimism and positivity that she brings to the team," Panabaker said. She hasn't seen Barry save the city 100 plus times, so it's nice to have a new fresh perspective, and one that is so positive. I think Caitlin, at times, particularly in earlier seasons, was always wary of the negative consequences of things. And to have someone like Khione, who's constantly looking for a more positive perspective, and truly is a glass half full kind of gal, has been a lot of fun. Again, there's nothing wrong with the sentiment. I think maybe in season 6 or something, then yeah, it could work, as it was like a software reset for the show after Crisis. So an audience surrogate like Khione could work, not to mention all the extra time to flesh the character out. So to conclude, there is no point to Khione. This character suffers due to being introduced in a final season. 13 episodes isn't enough time to introduce and flesh a character, especially when the cast is already too bloated with pointless extras. Not to mention the fact that Eric Wallace tried to write 2 story arcs and wrap up the show in a meaningful way. Khione is sadly the biggest flaw in Eric Wallace's showrunning and writing style, an unnecessary addition with absolutely no depth whatsoever. In some ways, she is objectively worse than Cecile or Allegra. Despite them both being unlikable characters, they have contributed slightly more to the show than Khione ever could. Well, that's my thoughts anyway. What do you think of Khione? Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed what you saw and would like to stay up to date, then please hit that like button and subscribe. It will really help my channel continue to grow. Right, I shall see you all you dudes on the next one. Goodbye.